Well, welcome everyone to the opening session of the Year of Mental Health 2025. This whole series of sessions is brought to you by the Ecocivilisation movement. Ecocivilisation is a global disruptive cluster of people who care. And just getting ready for this session, we gave care a special meaning. Compassionate awareness, relaxed experience. So we hope we will be faithful to this new understanding of the word care. Our vision, mission, values, principles, and much more, all that can be seen on the webpage, which was already shared with you before, but just for the sake of the argument, ecocivilization.earth is the name of the webpage. And we're really happy that today, as we speak, more than 50 countries are connected to this global movement. And interest is growing simply because people have too many questions that they cannot get the right answers for. And we try to create spaces within which people feel safe to explore their curiosity and seek answers to those deep questions. And it's not a coincidence that all these new topics are emerging, because it seems like the entire planet Earth, and along with it also the humans and our societies, are in a big transition from 12,000 years of stability, which is known to us as a Holocene, where everything pretty much in the nature was predictable. That doesn't mean that it was the same, but it was predictable. Temperatures, climate, the amount of water. So all this rich diversity, and including the rich civilizations, had the right conditions to emerge. But now the human interaction was with the natural cycles, on one hand, is quite severe, and we cannot even imagine or even comprehend what kind of consequences will that have on a long cycles. But at the same time, we are meeting those long cycles of planet Earth. So double challenged, of course, humans, we can fairly say we're getting a bit confused because our inner world is not equal to what we're used to, and it's not equal to what we see around us. Somehow we propose to each other three very different directions in which we could potentially go as humanity. If we follow the history throughout the last 1.5 million years, we could see that every single civilization that existed on this beautiful planet Earth so far ceased to exist. It met its end. Will that be the case for our civilization? Or have we created tools in the form of technology that can help us to reinvent ourselves and have a smooth transition without a complete destruction into something new and fresh? Well, while we're thinking about that, the IT world is offering us a direction called transhumanization, which somehow predicts that humanity has done its share on this planet Earth, and that the future is in some sort of positronic civilization, which will be a mixture of natural materials and technology, and will represent a rise of a new, completely different civilizational paradigm. Well, luckily, there is also the third option, which still hopes to give humanity a chance and help humanity to fully develop all its dimensions, because especially in the last couple of hundred years, we overstressed mental and physical layers, but forgot about many other aspects of humanity that also exists. And that's a basic framework within which the Year of Mental Health is now evolving. And of course, the big question here is, why is this the right time, and why now? So let me share some of my thoughts before we start engaging with our guests. I feel like our growing interest in the intangible layers of existence, being like thoughts, emotions, energy, and the deeper forces shaping our actions, seem to signal an evolutionary shift. Mental health is no longer seen as an isolated issue, but as a fundamental part of human well being. The timing of the shift is also not random, as I tried to portray to you before. It reflects a broader transformation in our collective consciousness. And as we evolve, we are becoming more introspective, questioning not just how we live, but why. More people are recognizing that well being extends beyond the physical and is deeply tied to our emotional and mental states. The rise of mindfulness, meditation, and even quantum perspective on consciousness suggests a collective expansion of awareness, pushing us to reconsider long standing assumptions about reality. At the same time, traditional structures, governments, religions, economic systems are being challenged, making space for new ways of thinking, feeling, experiencing. Technology has also a accelerated role in this shift, propelling us into unfamiliar mental and emotional territory. With rapid change comes uncertainty, and without the right mental tool, we risk social entropy, burnout, disconnection, and dysfunction, which many of us started to experience. Mental health has emerged as a necessary adaptation, a way to navigate this landscape with resilience. The more we focus on it, the more it becomes embedded in our collective consciousness, reinforcing the idea that awareness itself creates a change. But mental health is not just an individual pursuit. It shapes out relationships, our workplaces, and our societies. We're beginning to see that our struggles are interconnected, that when one person suffers, the effects ripple outward, influencing the entire system, organization, community. This realization is pushing mental health to the forefront, not just as a personal concern, but as a crucial factor in shaping the future of our societies, communities, and humanity as a whole. In many ways, we are at crossroads. Either we adapt, learning to integrate emotional intelligence, resilience, and deeper awareness into our lives, or we risk being overwhelmed by pressure of modern existence that could lead to the fall of our civilization. The fact that mental health is now mainstream suggests that collectively we are choosing evolution over collapse. As we move forward into the year of mental health, we will continue exploring different perspectives, uncovering the deeper forces at play, and developing tools to help us balance all six aspects of our life: physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, social, and the energy layer. This is not just a conversation, it is a journey towards a more conscious and connected way of being. And I really hope you'll join us on this journey. And with that, I'd like to share the key drivers for Ecocivilisation to address mental health. First is that the mental health is a pillar of resilience and sustainability. We want to break the stigma for a better quality of life related to mental health and empower stewards of societal, civilizational change. For that, we see the core purpose in raising the awareness, challenging stigma, create safe spaces, and of course, provide solutions. This year of mental health has been brought to you by incredible colleagues, Dr. Rajni Vohra, curator and editor, member of Ecocivilisation movement, but also entrepreneur and involved in many, many very interesting projects, including a powerful portal, WAH Woman. And Eleftheria Kakamboras, Ecocivilisation ambassador for Europe, an incredible supporter of Ecocivilisation movement, a healer herself, psychoanalysts, incredible support for many, especially women, when we found ourselves in the situation that we think are impossible to overcome, but with a very professional guidance, there is always a way forward. And myself, a founder and curator of Ecocivilisation. So this is just to frame the whole year of mental health and to put it in a perspective and hopefully also challenge you enough to put some of your intimate personal thoughts together and ask yourselves, what is my relationship with this topic and how do I see it in the society and how do I deal with it whenever I'm challenged. Today, for the opening session, we have with us three very special guests. And I'm very grateful for all three of them to be with us and to share their deep knowledge, wisdom, and experiences from this evolving awareness related to mental health. Dr. Barbara Hrovatin, who practices integrative medicine and who sees the challenges of mental health in her medical profession all the time. And she will share with us also the more systemic perspective to this topic, while then sharing also her personal views. Arti Ahluwalia, incredible friend from India, Ecocivilisation India, driver and entrepreneur. But you would ask yourself, why is she talking about mental health? Well, you will see that her incredible experience as a CEO of a construction company, but before that, as a volunteer dealing with especially mental challenges in the most delicate areas of her country and neighboring countries in Kashmir, for example, she will have a very deep stories to share with us. And Milos Boroshek, a representative of a younger generation, which I'm very happy she was able to respond to our invitation and join us. I hope he will share his not only experiences from his practice. As you could see, he works as a counselor, but at the same time, his also personal experiences that he was able to either live through or see while being a very, very active member of a Slovenian Scout organization, dealing with young people over and over again, and learning from the experience how to address, but especially what are the types of challenges that especially young people are facing. So these are our guests. And now let me invite them to share with you first thoughts. And my first question to all three of them, which is also they will be opening statements, are how does today's topic relate to you, to your professional life, to work that you deal with, and what inspired you that you actually started to professionally engage with these very challenging topics. So I invite Dr. Barbara Hrovatin to share her thoughts.
Hello, everyone. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm not an expert in mental health. So I am a former GP and an integrative medicine worker, professional, combining the world of biomedicine with more broader framework of healing practices based on relationality of human beings. So my primary foundation for broadening the scope of how I see health and how I see human beings beyond the biomedical frame approaching human beings is concerned with the word healing, which is still seen a little bit in a demeaning way, more pertaining to unlegitimate ways of practicing, non-medical ways of practicing. But still it contains the very important core, which is wholeness and a journey towards wholeness. And of course, in this view, you can't see mental, bodily, societal, environmental health separately. It gets impossible. It gets untenable also through newer scientific research in biomedicine itself. We cannot see those areas separately anymore. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you my thoughts regarding this untenability of divisions and how to nourish and support people on their journey into wholeness. Violeta, did you mean for me to share the presentation now?
Yes, please. Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry. I thought we will all answer the question first. Sorry. So here it is. Yeah, let's go. Opening the space. My fil rouge, my thread will be through illuminating the framework of mental health, what we mean when we speak of mental health, and what are the challenges in biomedical view of health in general and therapeutic approaches, to shifting towards creating health. So away from focusing on pathogenetic mechanisms of divided parts towards seeing wholes and creating health. I chose this beautiful photo of Auguste Rodin's sculpture called The Cathedral for our beginning, because if you look at it a little bit more carefully, you can see that these are two right hands. So these are two people in relationship, although not touching each other. And it reinforces the relationality of the topic of mental health. So what is mental health? Many definitions. I went with the WHO one, which is the most used one, where they use, interestingly, words as a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stresses of life and also to realize their potentials, their abilities, to learn well and work well and to contribute to their community. WHO writes that it is an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, to build relationships, to shape the worlds we live in. And even that this is a basic human right, a crucial thing to personal, community, and socioeconomic development. So it is a very broad field, a very broad scope affecting our life in every single frame. But if we look at it in a maybe more well-known categories of mental disorders, we can see from this recent Lancet study from 2019 where they looked at disability-adjusted life years. That means how mental disorder affects not only the quality but also the quantity of life. We can see that the most of this pyramid going through different age groups is red. That means the majority of mental disorders are in the realm of depressive and anxiety disorders. But mental health is much more than the absence of those mental disorders. It exists on a continuum that is really shaped differently by individuals, and includes not only those states that we've seen, but also other types of distress, impairment of functioning, and also a risk of self-harm. Mental health, of course, cannot be divided from health in general. And for that one, you probably know the 1948 definition of WHO. Health is much more than absence of infirmity or disease, but a state of social, physical, and psychological well-being. We sense in this definition already that it contains the three major realms. So it's not health, and also mental health cannot be only biological. It cannot only be about our chemical reactions, hormones, receptors, genes, toxins, but it's also social. Is how we live in the most gentle of our years in early life. What are we exposed to? What are the socioeconomic situations, educational, cultural stresses, discrimination, and also psychological, how we are experiencing these environments ourselves with beliefs, emotions, coping skills. So this is the so-called psychosocial model that is really accepted in medicine, but it's very rarely that we actually see it realized in day-to-day clinical care. As a curious intermezzo, an etymological question that I found really interesting during my PhD studies for medical anthropology. On the one hand, there is a common root for health in many languages, where being healthy, being whole, and being holy comes from the same root word. It's the same in Slovene as well, not only in the Anglo-Saxon countries. But on the other hand, mental health. Why do we speak about mental health? I do believe that this is a somewhat awkward translation of René Descartes' division of the soul and the body. Back in 16th century, he's usually blamed for this division that was a foundational core of enlightenment, enabling great progress. But still he was speaking about âme et corps. That means there was a soul, not mind and body. And also in Slovene, we are speaking about duševno zdravje, which means soul health or health of the soul. And I encourage you to think about your local languages. How is your most common terminology for what we call in English mental health? One of the latest research done in Europe, Eurobarometer in 2023, interviewing more than 26,000 people across European 27 countries, found out that every second European citizen had an emotional or psychological problem in the past year. Also, majority, even more so, in younger age groups. And for most respondents, the recent developments in our neighborhood, war and epidemics, COVID epidemics, and all the social consequences of it have influenced their mental health. One of the important parameters as a risk factor for mental health is access to mental health services, but by far, as we shall see, not the most important one. Here, EU citizens illuminate long waiting lists and delays of diagnostics and treatment, and also their confusion as to where to turn to when having such a psychological disturbance, when they feel tension about psychological issues in their life. When asked what would best help in improving mental health in Europe, again, we see how people follow the biopsychosocial depiction of health even without knowing it. So they said improve the overall quality of life. That was the majority of answers. Security, also contact with nature, green spaces, physical activity, and importantly, social contact. These were the most frequent answers that people gave in this Eurobarometer inquiry. If we look at mental health through the lens of depression, one of the most prevalent mental disorders, we can see that the numbers are across Europe between 4 and 9% of people experiencing chronic depression, and always more women in all age groups. There are more women. More women are almost twice as likely as men to suffer from chronic depression. Depression accounts, this is a staggering number, for up to 50% of chronic sick leaves in the European Union, and about 5% of GDP goes for, this is for mental health, not anymore for depression, but even more in some countries, in some European countries. And this number is rising post-COVID. As I mentioned, we often hear how the focus of health systems are to improve access to different forms of psychological care. But studies show that in general, length and quality of life are only in minority, only in 10 up to 20% dependent on healthcare systems. I find this quite a surprising figure. Majority is defined by so-called social determinants, where poverty, inequalities, discrimination, possibilities of employment, education, safety come into play, as well as lifestyle and health factors like environments, water, air, clean air, housing, and mobility. These are all vastly more important than healthcare systems itself. Or if we use the terminology that I really like with Sir Michael Marmot, he speaks not so much about the social determinants of health, but about causes of causes. So these are actually causes of our good or ill health. And he implored all states and organizations to improve the conditions in which people live, are born, grow, work, and age, and really approach the inequitable distribution of power, money, and resources. In other words, to really focus more on this majority of factors that really shape our health and mental health as well. If we now look under the hood of how biomedical approaches are actually played out, I wanted to show it with this metaphor of a tree. And we see that biomedical interventions, biomedical attention is concentrated on bodily and mental systems above the ground. So it is isolated parts, molecules, genes, receptors, chemical reactions that are visible, measurable, accessible with our technologies, and can be studied with scientific studies. And also importantly, each of these branches that I named, just a few of the possible medical specializations, are dealt with separately. There are separate specializations, separate congresses, separate guidelines, separate recommendations for therapies. So it's very siloed approach to one human being, mostly with specific measurable medicamentous or surgical procedures. This underground, the vast area of roots and the soil usually remains out of the scope of the focus of medicine, but it's incredibly important, even for the work of the medicaments and the surgery itself, but also for how healthy or unhealthy we are, or can be. So how we can rest, the supplies of water and food, can we be in movement, can we have an internal meaning, relationships, friends, family, and community, safety, belonging, equal grounds for reaching our potentials, and exposure to different environmental stresses. So the soil is extremely important. And I just want you to want you to see this. This is an old discussion. This was supposedly discussed already 200 years ago between Louis Pasteur and Claude Bernard. Pasteur, of course, claiming that it is the microbe determining who will get sick. And Bernard, as physiologist, as a founder of homeostasis, he claimed that no, it is the terrain on which the microbe falls that determines whether and how much and how long we get ill and can we be healed. So now even in medicine we know we can study, we can pinpoint the mechanisms of how we can say the experience, something subjective and very elusive, individual, can really get under the skin, can really materialize in the pathophysiological processes. We speak about dysregulation, about allostatic load, about chronic inflammation, all consequences of what we could term biology of disadvantage, and on all different systems at the same time. We can speak about biography getting embodied, because humans are social and biological organisms at the same time. And we now have really an extensive body of studies to show that. One of those are adverse child experiences, really showing us how negative experiences in childhood, for example, incarceration of or death of a parent, abuse, neglect, drugs in the family, can actually affect health decades later in our adulthood. We already spoke about social determinants of health, measurably impacting our health all through life, even in the womb, starting even in the womb. And we now have a whole new world of epigenetics showing us that our life experiences, our life exposures are actually changing expressions of genes in response to internal and external stimuli. So the DNA is no longer an executive code of life telling us with our inherited data what our life will be, but it's constantly emerging, talking to our life experiences, becoming more a fluid concept. So we come to the world of relationships, now paving its way also in the biomedical world. We now know that social support is the most important modifiable factor for morbidity and longevity in general. We know that how we are with patients in therapeutic encounters can actually measurably define clinical outcomes. And there was even one social experiment that I wish to close with, called From Compassionate Communities project, where they, together with the local general practice and local people who became community health connectors, gathered together what is happening in From, a subdivision of Somerset County in England. In 3 years, with connecting and sharing and opening spaces and connecting people, they were able to show a measurable and significant lowering of emergency unit visits, while at the same time in the whole region of Somerset, those visits were increased. In From, they were decreased. And this is the first known experiment to show that we can actually measurably improve lives, but also make measurable improvements in our healthcare costs. Julia Nabel speaks about that this is a most effective intervention that we have in improving health and well-being across populations, and that it's good to really embed as a part of care compassionate communities, to put it on the map. And Dr. Helen Kingston, who is a medical director of the project, says really importantly, having these community resources at hand means that we can meet the needs of our patients in a way that is most meaningful to them, rather than struggling to find answers to social problems with medications. So they speak what we can, in umbrella term, also name salutogenesis, salus, health, genesis, creation. So we are now shifting, we have tools to shift more from our focus from external interventions way downstream when we catch ill people and try to fix them, towards supporting internal capacities for this particular person, for this particular community, way upstream, often with much less expensive and much less technologically dependent ways. So this is a shift from pathogenesis towards salutogenesis, from what we wish to fix, to predict, to control, from external power resources, doing to people, towards strengthening, cooperating with what is already there in people, in communities, with compassion and care, with being with what really matters. So it is a shift from what's the matter towards what really matters to you. This is a very difficult task in our digital pervasive world, in our focus towards technology as salvation, in also our biomedically shifting focus towards so-called precision medicine. I just want to expose that already now, more than half of the clinical time of a physician is spent with computer. And Abraham Verghese is speaking about eye patients that are more easily treated in the computer than in real life, with all the vast array of consequences. So this is the last slide I wish to end with, and also with a beautiful explanation of psychologist Rollo May about what care is. He said, care is a state in which something does matter. Care is opposite of apathy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for this very comprehensive and also very sensitive explanation of how we see mental health today, how we treat mental health today, and where are the potentials to improve our relationship with this important topic. We will continue to engage with you in a discussion, but allow me now that I invite dear friend Arti to step in and share her points of view, her experiences, and maybe relate them to what Barbara presented so nicely as today's understanding of mental health and care and health altogether. So please, Arti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Violetta, and thank you so much for holding the space for such an important discussion. Barbara, I think every word that you spoke resonated so beautifully, I think, with everybody. And specifically, something that struck a chord with me was the diagram of the tree. Interestingly, the root section that you showed is where Ayurveda operates, right? So it is really about getting to the root of how we are constructed. What is our design in correlation to the system that we are a part of? A lot of people have asked me, so Arti, where are you from? And instinctively, the first response that I want to give is stardust. This has been my favorite, understanding of how we are made, and what do we become once we are done, right? So the correlation or the relationality between our presence and our functionality is not difficult to figure out. To me, and Violetta spoke about, one of the interventions that I had done. Let me tell you, this was before 2020, and of course, I think we were all hit by COVID, and we had to take certain different life decisions. And at that time, it felt that I've given up on something that I was so passionate about. And I realized that no, it would continue. So let me tell you what the story is. So 2014, I was, literally by the roadside looking at some school students step out of a school. And we had a taxi stand there where the drivers were talking to each other in what I call words of endearment. And I remember looking at these children's faces and asking myself this question: who's going to undo this for them? Who's going to tell them that do not internalize this in your system? And then I told myself, this is not even that severe. They go through a lot of severe circumstances. Now, I came from almost 20 years in learning and development, looking at learning psychology, looking at learning systems. And I realized that they are so confined to the corporate world. How about we experiment with those because they are functional, they do deliver results onto the bigger, society that is in need. And that is when I started working on a framework that is now called Be Well. So Be Well, and I love saying this, it's both a wish upon the next generation and it stands for behavior and well-being. And the question I had asked was that if it takes a village, then where is the village? Who's in it? What are they doing? Interestingly, I kept, and I was working specifically with the adolescents. So when you look at brain plasticity at that point of time, it is extremely soft, highly impressionable. It's constantly absorbing information, constantly processing it, constantly, that information is becoming a part of these growing human beings, these young people who would eventually become the adult decision-making citizenry of any country of the world. So this whole system, and I feel very happy listening to Barbara because everything that she spoke to me validates the approach. So I started putting the child at the center of everything, let's say at a district level, and I started working with a 60-minute engagement with the child, asking about a set of questions and documenting it, handwriting it. And at a later stage, segregating that information, classifying it under close to about 100 parameters and generating a report. And I used to be very happy in saying that, in my report, you would not find a single numerical element except for the serial numbers, because these reports were narratives. In our world, globally, I believe, there are two ways of understanding young people. One is their academic performance, and second is, in some traditional societies, the horoscope. There is no third narrative that is created for us to understand children and make informed decisions. Even for the child, if I say you've scored a 90% or you've got a grade B, how is that going to tell the child what to continue working on? And what are some of those areas that they should really deeply look at? Now, for me, this experience was, it protracted till about 30, 60, 90 days, till the time we were sure that sufficient input has been shared with the child. And in this 30, 60, 90 day process of engaging with this child based on the report, which is clearly highlighting the vulnerabilities. And like I said, across 100 parameters, we would also brief the parents, we would also brief the teachers, we would bring in the local education department, we would also tie in the local universities, because our PhD students in sociology, psychology, these were the people who were trained to become mentors, right? This one-on-one system. So our tagline used to be one teen at a time and the entire ecosystem together, right? So if you think about it, we are panning out from keeping the child at the center of the society of that immediate district. We also roped in the local corporate, any kind of businesses that were locally present. So we used to ask this question that what kind of aspirations are you creating locally for children to have examples? In the entire bargain, what I observed was that in every quarter, in every space of human engagement, we've developed a comfort with neglect. And that was very difficult to put a solution for, to define a solution that how do you become less comfortable with neglect. That required a lot of people. So clearly, I mean, I still hold this very firmly today that it is our comfort with neglect, and it is a human intensive affair that is going to possibly bring in that shift. While we are, accelerating in our technologies and how we engage with it and what we are developing, I mean, it's not scary for me, because I think our history tells us we are tool makers. We will always make tools, but I think the last slide, Barbara, was bang on, that it would always be our intention with which we are going to drive these tools. So till 2020, I had worked on three, significant projects. One was the Blue Whale Game Challenge, where kids were committing suicide. So they were receiving instructions for a period of 25 days. And it was, basically to desensitize them from fear of either cutting themselves, fear of watching scary stuff, fear of listening to, scary music. And these were the instructions that the children would be sent. Now, interestingly, the Supreme Court of India had at that time invited all the tech giants to find a crack for this challenge. And they said, because of your privacy laws, we cannot interfere, which is a real challenge. So for some strange reason, my NGO at that time was brought in, and I called it out as psychological manipulation based on vulnerabilities expressed on social media. Now, interestingly, that's what it turned out to be. So Peter Budekin was the kid, a Russian kid, I believe. Peter, I think his first name was Peter. And he said he was pretty miffed because he was kicked out of his course. And he said, I'm going to die, but I wouldn't die alone. So if you look at what is the emerging map of this whole, this is just one project I'm talking about. And this brought out so many, it just opened all the possible cans of worms there ever were. And I ended up addressing close to 30,000 school principals, teachers, parents. And I was completely bombarded with such ghastly, nasty stories from the ground that it just made me even more determined to stick around and train more people to become a part of the Be Well framework. The second project was in the northeastern state of India called Assam, where I ended up working with about 100 orphan girls who had lost their parents during one of the riots in about 2013. So when I met them, they were all teenagers trying to, figure life out, and just sitting with them, talking to them for those 60 minutes just built so much of direction, because those 60 minutes were for them, with them, about them. And that is the thing that is absent in the whole landscape of human engagement today, right? So the third, and interestingly, the the founder of this foundation I was working with, which also has like a political presence in the region, they came back and said that since the time we've adopted these girls, we've never seen this kind of energy in them, this kind of determination to really discover their life path, which was based on what they already hold as a strength. And in that process of working with these girls, we also ended up training their teachers. We also ended up training their guardians. And even, some of the local businesses had come forward. The third project was in Jammu Kashmir, which was, I would say, it's slowly getting a little better. It was one of the most troubled states of the country, with absolutely, like, every minute you would have news about terroristic attacks and the Indian army doing something else and the border army doing something else. So this was a very, very volatile region. I think one of the longest standing wars for the last 100 years in our modern world. And when I started working, so I was working with about 10 different education blocks with teachers to sensitize them of how to identify what are some of those behavioral indicators that would tell you if a child is troubled, if some kind of an intervention can be done. Because you see, most of the teachers or counselors present in educational institutes don't know what is the solution against the problem or the challenge, right? Those are like, normally they would apply what I call off-the-shelf solutions. That's not going to cut it. So engaging with a child, I mean, it's like talking to a friend. You don't talk to a friend exactly the way you would have spoken with your boss or your cousin, your mother. You would talk to the friend exactly based on what the friend needs, right? So it was literally bringing it down to something that instinctive. Even training the mentors. Interestingly, in the Jammu Kashmir project, we, one day we realized that there's some kind of a trouble disturbance happening in that region. And 2 children were brought to me by the army at that time, that they had crossed the border to become terrorists. Now, this was, it lifted a veil, because when I engaged with these children, I asked them, why did you? So these are rural communities. They have no awareness. There's very minimal education. So parents were of the mind that now that the child has been registered and will get a midday meal or has a set of clothing, the child should really go to the mountains with the goats. And when this kid used to come back to the class, he couldn't understand anything and used to get ridiculed. For him, there's no acceptance anywhere for who he is. And he would transgress his own boundaries to destroy himself for the sake of acceptance. This is what all of us do in our worst circumstances, in the most pressurizing circumstances. We don't realize it. Bit by bit, we keep losing ourselves. Look at the whole global leadership today. At one of the UN events, I actually ended up saying this, that when you look at the leadership of the world, anyone sitting with a finger on their button, on the button to destroy the world is a product of poor nurturing and disturbed childhood. This is a risky statement to make, but yes, you've got consequences. I bore them, and we're all here. The second statement was that as a third generation product of independent India, I still carry that residue of conflict in me. So if the leadership of the world is not trying to poison generations, then A, they should not be the leadership, or B, that is their MO. This was then. As of today, I have personally evolved in understanding this space as well. So we're trying to craft projects in, on the business side of things, where we can engage with the political leadership. At the end of the day, who are they if not humans? Who are they if not from the same system that any one of us is from? So I think there has to be another layer that has to be moved out in terms of engaging. Like I said, it's a human intensive effort. No amount of technology is going to make us better than who we are right now. So when we look at, so many dimensions that are validating our need to attend to mental health, all of them are pointing to one truth. And that's like the most basic definition of behavior. It can be improved based on the environment. Behavior can be managed, can be improved, can be regulated based on the environment. So while I was working with students and that entire ecosystem, I realized that these are the people who have to go out into the business world or the working world and find a job and engage with those systems. Now, those have no space for mental health. Those have no space for aspirations. So in my current avatar, as somebody who's trying to establish a certain line of business in the energy sector, I'm asking the same things, that if we want to see transition, then we need to manage waste. We need to manage water resources. We need to have better land use. And who's controlling them, if not the local syndicates at the ground level? And who are these people stuck in the web of vulnerability, manipulated and deployed? So our action today is about looking at what is that fabric of society that is allowing us to move in our institutions. And that is why we need to engage. So it's like a parallel process. We have to engage with the students. We have to engage with those children who are not students. We have to engage with the leadership. We have to engage with the business world. We have to engage with, the final Lord Gods of everything. And we all suffer from the same deficiency because inherently our systems do not hold space for that level of engagement, for those conversations to happen. Those really, I would say, archaic, not even archaic, I mean, something that I call jaded, those ideas about be a risk taker, I mean, those are, sometimes I just laugh and I think that we got this so wrong. We got this so terribly wrong. I mean, the way we are functioning in our institutions is completely unnatural to our design. And therefore, that shift is going to take a backbreaking effort by literally everybody who understands that this needs to be applied. This effort needs to be applied. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm human enough. And I think that's the only role we need to perform. To stand up, to understand, to create space, to hold space, to ask questions, to listen, to build on it. It is, Be Well as a framework is literally that simple. And another interesting thing that I'd add to this is that the offshoot of Be Well was a very interesting project that I created right when COVID came in. And this was a prison reform project to ensure that the adolescents caught in the prison systems do not become repeat offenders. And clearly, the objective was that since we do not have a point of departure for that rehabilitation, let's build one which is more aligned to the so-called convict's personality, their social, background, and the potential that they have for future. And then these were broad-ranged in terms of, what are these sub-parameters? Interestingly, the head of department for psychology for one of the universities really put his name on it. And I'm literally looking forward to restarting Be Well 2.0 and the prison project called Neve, which means the Root 2.0. It's all up for grabs. It's there in the world. Like I said, it's human intensive. And that's where I think most of us end up shying because this is not theoretical. It's literally bang on the ground when you do deliver, observe, weave, create, guide, involve, engage, all of those things. Mm-hmm. And just as a parting note, I'd like to share the link with everybody here so that in case you're interested in knowing what Be Well is about, here is an overview. And, one last thing about Be Well, that within Be Well, there's an adoption model. So, for example, our team would come in, do a pilot and create that capacity within the district. And then the district runs with it on their own. And if they need our help, then we come in like twice a year or something as auditors. So it's not about, one of the biggest things that's disturbed me is that any kind of a social technology, and by the way, in the age of technology, I'm calling this a soft technology. So it's not, the future is not of just hard technologies. There are also soft social technologies that are required. But people get so hung up about the ownership on that they want other people to join their system. They wouldn't create something to put it out there so everybody can join into it. This is what Be Well does, inherently, such as the design. So it's up for grabs, and I'm very happy to connect with anybody or, Year of Mental Health. We'd love to expand on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, really, Arti, for yet another dimension from practical examples, your personal views, and over again, re-emphasizing how important the environment is as well, and the effects of the environment, or being a positive enabler of change as well. So we'll get back to that. And I'd like to ask all of you present today here with us, while you're listening to these opening words, create some questions, comments, because we will give you a space and we would love to hear from you. And last but not least, Milos, the floor is yours. What's your take on it? What inspired you to become an advocate for mental health? What is your experience? Please.
Yes, thank you. So we were asked in the beginning if we have tools to support humanity in a period of instability, and my answer is yes. And it's based on my experience, and I want to share today how psychosynthesis offers a meaningful path to navigate this transformation. And I know a lot about the navigating transitions because in my previous career, I was a hardcore scientist. I did PhD in physics. And then during my other work in my free time, I realized I want to work more with people, not with the computers and technology, because each one of us is unique and each one has its own calling. And that's something I saw in engaging in scouting, working with young people, offering them experiential education. So I decided to transition from one hardcore science to another science, which is psychology and counseling work. So now I work as a counselor. Um, and I deeply resonate with the idea that our heightened focus on mental health is not merely an reaction to a societal trends, but rather an invitation to explore the deeper, intangible layers of our existence. And as we heard from all three speakers before me, that we live in a time where traditional paradigms are being questioned. How we school our youth, how we see uh, human body in the medicine, and what we experience is like collective awakening is unfolding. More and more people embrace different practices that foster mindfulness and inner clarity, allowing them to move from a fragmented, ego-based state toward a more unified and integrated way of being. And as Roberto Assagioli, the founder of Psychosynthesis, said, the first step in the path of self-knowledge is the discovery of the hidden self. And this insight reminds us that inner exploration is essential for true transformation. And I want to speak about three levels of human that we need to give more attention to. And this is psychological, existential, and spiritual. On a psychological level, our growing awareness of mental health highlights the importance of nurturing our emotional and cognitive well-being. So it's not just body and the body functions, but also the connection between the body and the mind. And imagine a person who, through deep reflection and support of maybe a psychotherapist or counselor, comes to understand that persistent anxiety was rooted in unresolved past experiences. And this recognition not only brings relief, but also opens the door to healing and integration. And in the existential realm, we are beginning to ask not just how we live, but also why we live. And many find that after years of pursuing external measure of success, a deeper sense of fulfillment emerges when they prioritize meaningful relationships and creative expressions. Joanna Macy encapsulated this beautifully when she stated that our deepest powers emerges when we embrace the interconnectedness of all life. We are all connected. And this brings me to the third layer, which is spirituality. And spirituality invites us to connect with a higher self, a core of wisdom and unity that transcends everyday experience. There are moments when we may feel an overwhelming sense of connection to all life, a reminder that our spiritual essence is always available to guide us. This awareness reinforces the idea that our inner and outer worlds are not separated, but deeply intertwined and connected. Based on this, what I see psychosynthesis can offer are three concepts that I want to speak about. One is the subpersonality or parts, the other is the will, and the third one is the disidentification. So let me start with the subpersonalities. Subpersonalities are a central element of psychosynthesis in their understanding and integration of our being. Each of us carries multiple inner voices. We have a nurturing one, a critical one, the creative one, and so on. The list goes on very long in my experience working with clients, and sometimes they conflict with each other, echoing the tensions we see in society. So our inner conflict are often reflection of our external conflict, and our external conflict, as we heard before from Arti, are a reflection of our inner conflicts. And Molly Young Brown, one of the psychosynthesis practitioners, says that healing begins when we allow every part of ourselves to be seen, honored, and integrated. And by acknowledging and harmonizing all of the parts in ourselves, we create more balanced inner landscape. And to do this, we in psychosynthesis use the will. Will is a dynamic force that bridge our inner world with our outer actions. And we recognize several aspects of the will. A strong will, which provides the energy to act. A skillful will is the one that guides our choices to make the best decisions. And the good will that ensures that our actions are compassionate and ethical. And all those three wills are the qualities of our personal self. But beyond the personal lies the transpersonal will, which is an expression of our higher self that infuses our decision with deeper purpose. And there is an evolution of the will, which is experienced in a cycle. So we start in a state of no will that leads to the recognition that will exist, that I have a will, and ultimately I am a will. So I can act from the place. I become an active role. I'm not receiver anymore. And then the last and maybe the most powerful concept in psychosynthesis is the disidentification. Disidentification involves stepping back from the ego-driven identities that limit us. Those are the roles and labels that maybe other put us on or we took them on that no longer serves our growth. And we want to disidentify from this. And once we disidentify, we want to identify with the self. This is the journey of reconnecting with our true and expansive self. This process often brings clarity, peace, and resilience as we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting entangled in them. If you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant chatter of your mind, practices like mindfulness meditation can help create the space needed to see beyond these temporary states and experience the enduring presence of your true self. So each step we take towards integrating these aspects of our being are the steps towards creating a more balanced, resilient, and authentic life. In essence, psychosynthesis provides a roadmap for navigating this profound shift in consciousness, a journey that transforms our inner world and in turn shapes the world around us. So those are my opening words, and I look forward to continue the dialogue.
Well, Milos, thank you very much for adding yet another piece to a more holistic understanding of what we are talking about here. Especially this, it touched me really deeply when you spoke about this individual, empowering an individual to create a space within which this holistic development can be achieved, and the path towards authentic relationship, not only with ourselves, but with everything around us, gets created. So we saw and heard three incredible stories, three incredible experiences and engagements in order to address mental health or to see beyond the challenges of mental health. And I will now invite first the audience, if they want to comment, if they want to have a question, and of course you could address it to all three of them, or maybe just individually to one of our speakers. And while you're getting ready for that, your presentation really brought forward a memory of a story that a dear colleague, Margaret Hanna from Scotland, shared with us a couple of years ago, also being a guest on one of the Ecocivilisation discussions. And she shared the results of her project that she was involved in Canada, a nuke project, if I remember correctly. And that project was all about understanding why the authorities are so unsuccessful with addressing the medical problems of First Nation tribes. They just could not get good results. So this project team went to look the conditions, and just to make the whole story shorter, they looked at the conditions under which these people are treated, and they've understood that the whole process is completely against their culture. The way how they interact with each other, the way how they address challenges in tribes. So the whole process was way too cold, way too impersonal, and they could not bring their relatives along, which they were used to in a traditional medicine. So what they did, they made an experiment, and they created a medical facilities that address those issues, bringing in colors that the natives use, creating special rooms for relatives to come along and be with the patients and be with people who were treated, not only from the mental health, but overall, also physical. And for me, what was so important is also that they created a space where the physician was not on the other side of the computer, but shared the chair on the same side, watching the screen together with the patient. So not creating a barrier, but creating a space where they could engage in the discussion. So all that had a positive mental consequence, mental health, spiritual consequence, emotional consequence. So the patient started to heal much faster. They were able to, accept or deal with the medical challenges that they had in much more effective way. So this is what all of three of you spoke about, this environment within which the healing takes place. Getting close to the authentic expressions of individuals that can be who they actually are, addressing the challenges that they personally have, and the support of the community within which they can heal much faster and better. That's what Arti also talked about. So just a little story that I wanted to share, because all your excellent presentations really brought it forward. So how little we pay attention to this setup within which any kind of healing is taking place. And maybe later on, Barbara, who knows this case even better, can share maybe more insights to it. But now I'm opening the floor. So any question from the audience, you can, if you don't want to speak, you can write a question or comment in the chat and I will read it, or you can just unmute yourself and raise your question. Anyone? No comments? No provocations? No additional questions or personal experiences? If not, then I will ask our guests a question which is related to this. So, based on your personal experiences, do you recall what were the elements or sort of a shifting moments and what caused these shifting moments for individuals to either get a higher level of awareness about their own condition or how they dealt with the conditions that were identified? What were those turning points? Either Artie, Milos, or Barbara.
Yeah. So, and specifically in the context of the 100 girls that I spoke about, it's interesting that we ourselves, and I think, Violetta, I've actually spoken about this with you, that, and I want to actually work on developing this idea of how do we recognize our life location? What are the contexts in which we understand ourselves? So there are children as of today or young people who align themselves with how many likes they have on social media. So the inner work is way far away, as far as their objectives are concerned. Some people think that they have a lot of money and that is what defines them. Some people think they have intelligence or they're chasing wisdom by, giving up all the worldly pleasures and so on and so forth. With these 100 kids, it was all about recognizing where they stand, what defines them, what they align themselves with. And across these 100 parameters that I spoke about, there were, sociological aspects, there were technology aspects, there were familial interferences, trends, there were economic drivers, and so on and so forth. So the turning point happened when they saw themselves in a relatively more complete description. Up until now, their understanding of themselves was that they're orphans. Or that they've been, that they have a vulnerability that other children do not have. So to see yourself in another context, it just broad ranges you. I think most of the time, even for all of us as adult citizens, as adult people, we are lifted out of a certain circumstance or a certain state of depressive mood when we recognize ourselves in a better context. Right. So for me, that was the observation I made, that the turning point happens when people are made to see themselves more than they are sort of aligning themselves to be, or thinking that that's the limitedness of them. By design, we are created pretty unlimited in terms of our faculties, in terms of what we can think, what we can conceive of, what we can chase after, what we can build and deliver. Right. So that to me is really significant when we are coaching young people, when we're coaching even their parents, or anybody for that matter.
Well, thank you very much. Very clear. And which brings us back to this getting a chance to know who you are, what you want, where you want to be, and really addressing this in a holistic manner. So today's society, this is probably an opportunity for us to start creating those spaces, because we became very technical in that sense, and creating very cold and very economical spaces within which we engage, which usually do not allow us to really address ourselves holistically, not even getting close to our authentic self. as Milos also talked about. So maybe Milos and Barbara, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, I would like to add that something that Artie said and resonated with me, and I think is the turning point, is the point when you are for with someone, for them, with them, and it's about them. So this is the turning point.
Mm.
People often recognize like external problems, like a lot of clients come to me, they're dissatisfied with the job or work or relationships. They can recognize those external factors, and then when you offer them a space to be themselves, they can start to go on a journey of discovery who they really are beyond all those labels and educations and cultural expectations and things that we live in. And this is the turning point when you realize that you can be something that you really wanted for a long time, but you were afraid to be it because it's not aligned with the culture, or it's not aligned with the expectations of others. So and then when you experience this, that someone is there just for you without agenda, without idea you need to be this or you need to be that, this is the turning point when you realize there is more to me than just the life I lived up to this point.
Milos, may I ask you a question here? This is very powerful thought. Do you think that, and I'm not trying to run you out of business, but do you think that only counselors can do that? Or can you imagine humanity moving in this direction, that we create the quality relationships that actually would be a normal, a new normal? How do you feel, and what would take to create this as a new normal in a day-to-day life?
No, I would be happy to run out of the work if if we manage to do this, because that would mean that we are living in a way more authentic world where people live what they want to live and not what they were told or is expected for them. So I think we all can learn to listen deeply and to give our attention to the others.
Mm.
But we need to train, and Artie said it's 16 minutes. I mean, everyone has 16 minutes to listen to another human being. It doesn't need to be. I mean, for some cases, yes, it needs to take longer if there is a big trauma behind. You need a deeper work, but most of us, I mean, when was the last time that someone gave you 16 minutes of undivided attention? I mean, this itself is transformative.
Mm. Well, something to look forward to. Let's move in this direction together. Barbara, would you like to come in with your comment, please?
I'd love to, because it's so really connected with everything I studied and researched. And there were two big rivers that came together from my work with physicians that were really difficult to find words for. But they were deep listening, deep, generous listening, and authentic presence, which is, as you can imagine, completely out of the box for biomedical world. It's nothing that we would ever even touch upon in our education or systems of practice. And yet, we found this common denominator of creating a space where healing is possible, even in healthcare. And it was funny when you mentioned time, because we always say there is no time, right, in healthcare. This can happen in half a minute. Being seen, being recognized, being affirmed, being listened to is not a time frame thing. And on the other hand, what was really surprising was when they really followed the threat of not having enough time, and they made an interesting experiment in Wisconsin, in Family Medicine Wisconsin University. They gave family physicians 40 minutes of time per patient, and nothing happened. Because you need to be empowered within yourself as a therapist, as a physician, as somebody who comes in relationship with people who come for help, in order to make something of that time, of whatever time you have. So it's really important, the intention that we spoke about. The intention is really important, and also to be aware of what's possible. Otherwise, we come to essentialize things. We essentialize, we put it on a sift. We put whatever humans say on a sift, and what comes out are codes of diseases, are guideline medications, are things that we need to take off in our work, and where real relationship is almost impossible because our focus, our attention stays elsewhere. So I really loved what both of you spoke about, because this is real person-centered care, but it has to go on both sides of the stethoscope.
And just
Wonderful.
to
Yes,
just
go
to
ahead,
add to
Arti.
this, Belinda, I'd like to share something about how did we prepare mentors, as a part of our ecosystem. So the first thing we did was we reached out to the local universities. We tapped into the PhD students of psychology and sociology. And these were certified practitioners, right? So that was our first, I would say, pilot bunch of mentors. And then we started marketing, saying that anybody who has time, a love for the future, an intention to connect with the present, and is from the learning and development background, from entrepreneurial background, from people engagement backgrounds, you're all most welcome to join and become mentors locally for your regions, for your communities. And then they had to undergo a 12-day learning program with us, out of which I would say 4 days was theory, which was a mix of understanding systems thinking, understanding design thinking, understanding discovery learning, understanding cognitive behavior therapy, and a mix of a whole lot of these things. The beauty of this training was that the rest of the time they were asked to look at casework and conduct the Be Well session. And the other, participants would become observers. So this was like a very healthy discussion. And because they were from the region, for them, whatever the endemic challenges were also folded in by way of these mock sessions. The one thing that we made sure was that none of the mentors is going to work with us for more than 90 days at a stretch. There were self-care, approaches for the mentors, because they're dealing with a lot of heavy stories, and it becomes a part of your person. You get depressed and you break the chain of continuity. So to help us maintain that chain of continuity where people, school students engage better with university students because there's less age barrier, right? There's a lesser age gap. So that connection or that connectedness is sensed immediately. And the way we could ask these questions, the way the mentors were trained to ask these questions was, in tonality, body language, facial expression, choice of language, creative sentence construct. These were some of the main aspects of how you would present yourself in the role of a mentor. And after 90 days, because that was the maximum amount of time we would engage with a child also, because one of the things we were very mindful of was that we do not want to create dependencies. We do not want to become a crutch. So beyond 90 days, the mentors would also take a break. I think these are some of the, and why did we do that? Because we studied how does this work and how does it not work? And we just built that in.
Interesting. Now that we got a very new, simple but very straightforward model started to emerge out. If we want to deal with this mental health, if I understood all of three of you correctly, we need new competences. We need more knowing what is actually possible. We need new well-trained mentors in order to be prepared with the right language, body language and words, and somehow find a way to stimulate individuals to move towards a higher level of authenticity. So I hope we will continue to explore these elements further. Before I move on, because the time is incredibly non-generous to us, I would like to just invite Wiebke, because she made a couple of comments, and maybe Wiebke, you would like to make your own personal comment or raise a question or a new issue. Please, Wiebke.
Thank you. This is greetings from Germany. There's just some thoughts that flowed in when Artie was speaking, like business, what it used to be that businesses were serving community. Like, what is a business? A business used to be an activity that creates more value for the community it serves. Well, that has gone away, really. Businesses now is about winning, and it is about making profit, value in the reduced sense of money only. So everything is only running towards winning more, higher efficiency, and feelings seem to be in the way. And the schools educate for the business. They used to educate, like for the military, educate the children so that they fit into the military environment, and which does not cater for feelings. So it really feels like a huge shift if we could get the kids at school and shift the schools and give this space to all the feeling that our generations, we're struggling with it, we're breaking it open, and with that we open the space for the coming generations to fill it, to live a more holistic life. And then business can possibly return to being in service of their community, away from domination and winning. Those were the thoughts, totally lateral to what you all were saying. Thank you for giving me the space.
Super. Thank you, Viveka, for your response and your point of view, which just re-emphasizes what we've heard today, this connection between something that drives us in this sort of high-tech digital world, profit-oriented, accumulation-oriented, centralized world, which is working more and more against our nature, who we are. And we started to rebel, but because the rebellion is coming this time from the inside, it's causing all these conflicts that then reflect in a matter of mental challenges, which are, if we take a look at the other languages, the way how they address that, they're actually soul and heart challenges, because that's where the conflicts are appearing. So thank you very much, really, for your reflection as well. I would just like to ask our three speakers now for really just the final thought, what either invitation or a question or just a really short sentence that would end your participation in today's session. And maybe we start with the same sequence as we started at the beginning. Barbara, go ahead.
My hope is to really be opening the space towards moving and understanding and nourishing life. I feel that now we are very entangled into system with mechanical rationality, trying to correct, fix, control, systematize, and that life somehow falls through the cracks of it. And I would really love to be part of this movement, of this shifting towards the really powerful qualities of life, which is always emerging and always in relation.
We're with you.
Yes, thank you.
We are with you. Let's put our strengths together and create this space that you so beautifully described. Arti?
I think my closing comment would be a request for everybody who's here and possibly is going to even watch this video to explore what Be Well is. Because honestly, Violetta, a lot of people said, Arti, when I was creating this, that you're going to see the outcome of this for, not for another 100 years. And my question was that none of us are born for 100 years. Does that mean that we leave those empty spaces with absent things? So here is something that's been created as possibly the first draft of how we can start engaging as one body of humanity. From the grassroots level, from our foundations, from the smallest unit of the society, that is family. So coming together on this agenda requires a certain structure. And all I can say is Be Well is level one. And I really hope and seek, collaborations to expand on this. It doesn't belong to me. I can't carry the weight of that. So it's up for grabs. It's out in the open. I'd like to play with a lot of people with it.
Fantastic. We have two hopes now already, and they are joining in the strength and in the wave that we're going to start feeling in the next times. So great. I mean, we are with you. So let's see how we can do it, actually. And Milos, last but not least, what would be your final thought?
My final thought is that you are not the same. Even though it might feel like you're the same, there are other people out there dealing with the same problems, same ideas they want to put in the world. So I think connecting with other people that work, finding the support, finding a help if you cannot do it alone, it's the best thing, but you're not alone. And it always feels like no one else experiences this, but that's not true. So, and if we connect, we build communities that make bigger impact than if you do it alone. So that's my final thought.
Thank you for this invitation as well. And let me dare to say that maybe today is the beginning of this intertwining and connecting, and hopefully this will continue to go in all directions where you will go, and will continue to empower these beautiful thoughts that we've heard today and they were shared. But please stay with me for just a few more moments, because I hope we will share with you how potentially this can grow further. We don't want to just stick with one session, and who else to invite, but two of the co-creators of the Year of Mental Health to explain in their own words what we are anticipating to see, hear, engage with in the next months, in this year 2025. And I'd first like to invite Dr. Rajni Vohra. Please, the floor is yours. And let me just explain that Rajni, Lefteri, and myself, we will share the coordination and holding space for these beautiful thoughts to continue to evolve throughout the year. And Rajni and Lefteria will present the content that has been already identified as an important content for the future discussions. And who knows, maybe through today's session, we will add some more, or we will actually co-shape even further these sessions. Rajni, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Violeta. And I won't take much time, but would love to give a brief outline to our audience, our friends, to give them enough understanding as to what they can expect. So where is slideshow? I don't know where it has gone. Slideshow. Yeah. Okay, so as you know, we are talking about mental health year, and I'm sure having heard and seen so many presentations so far by Dr. Violeta, Dr. Barbara, my dear Aarti, and Milos, by now it's clear how much of thought, brainstorming, and planning has gone into shaping this entire year, what we are calling mental health year with Ecocivilization. Because I tell you, there were several challenges. Because, first of all, given the sensitivity and relevance of this topic in today's society, we knew from the very beginning that we cannot afford to overlook or underplay any aspect which is akin to mental health. And I clearly remember when we had our first discussion last year, Alisteria, Violeta, and me, when we were deciding why mental health ought to be, a central theme for the year 2025. And we had countless questions in our head, not just why, what content, what topic that needed to be addressed, how to execute, who would be the right speaker, and so on. However, with the every subsequent discussion, as it happens that we gain more and more clarity that allowed us to define and structured our path forward. And as a result, we finalized some core sessions focusing on knowledge, insights, and addressing key challenges. So, based on our interest and alignment, we have divided these presentations with my co-organizer. As you know, Eleftheria is one of our co-organizer of these sessions, of course, under the guidance and leadership of Dr. Violeta Wuz. So, to give you an overview of what to expect, I will begin by outlining the key points of all the three sessions that I will be leading. So here I want to show you the glimpses of the first session. The first session, as you can see, the topic is very interesting, very intriguing. That is the foundation of mental health, and which is scheduled for March 26, 2025, wherein we will explore fundamental questions like what is mental health, why is it important, how can we approach it effectively. Of course, it may sound very, very elementary to many of us, but trust us, these are going to be very powerful dialogues and discourses. And to ensure that an authentic and qualitative discussion takes place, we have invited subject matter experts like psychiatrists, clinical psychologists who will bring deep insights into the medical, psychological, and social dimensions of mental health. We hope their expertise will help us better understand how mental health is shaped by biological, environmental, and emotional factors. And this is definitely very interesting and complicated as well, because this session is very, very topical. This topic is very topical in contemporary society. And we always believe that this ought to be brought up in sessions like these. And breaking the silence, the complete topic is breaking the silence, empower yourself to seek mental health support. Uh, as you all understand why this topic is so significant, because this is related with social stigma, which is attached to seeking advice, consultation, and even more treatment. That still remains a major challenge worldwide, regardless of geography. I'm not here talking about country like mine, which is still developing. People are being literate here more and more, and the literacy level is increasing. I'm also talking about developed nation. It still remains uh, a social taboo at a larger level. And the stigma that acts as a barrier that prevents individuals from seeking help from specialists. Besides this, we will also discuss in this session the other dimensions of society and the workplaces, the perceptions that impact well-being of employees, and what steps can be taken to foster a more supportive and open environment. Whether people feel safe to speak up and seek support. We will discuss all these through actionable steps too, because our goal is to encourage meaningful conversations and to promote awareness and break down these barriers. And the third session is it's all about modern therapeutic strategies for mental health. And as you can see in the picture also, this gives you ample idea as to what we are going to discuss. So this session will explore contemporary practices, methods in mental health treatment, including evidence-based therapies, emerging neuroscience-backed interventions, and modern-day digital mental health solutions and holistic wellness practices. Experts will discuss how modern psychology, AI-driven mental health tools, and integrative approaches such as mindfulness, nutrition, lifestyle changes are shaping the future of mental well-being. This session will also highlight how organizations and individuals can leverage these strategies to build resilience, to enhance emotional well-being, and support long-term mental health. So I expect that all of you should be ready to dive deep into the sea of knowledge and insight, because somewhere I feel that this is such a topic that touches everybody's life. I mean, I don't want to generalize it, but in my life, I have seen, even in my teens year, I have understood that there are many people who may not want to acknowledge it, but they definitely need mental health. We have seen it in our schools, colleges around us, in our neighbors, even in our families, relatives, that people are not ready to acknowledge that they need help. But there is a need, because it ultimately impacts society, it impacts families, it impacts relation, everything. And on that note, I end my presentation, and I invite my friend Eleftheria to come with her presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rajni. And Eleftheria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rajni. And if you know Rajni, you know that her best talent is giving structure and starting us off on our journey into really diving into understanding mental health from the structural point of view. And then we're going to dive deeper into our journey this year around mental health through another few topics. And these topics really have emerged through my own practice. I studied clinical psychology and then followed my heart in the direction of complementary therapies, because I believe that we're holistic beings. And so in 22 years of practice, what I'm really noticing is that these topics are really emerging for all of us. And I'm speaking to a lot of colleagues in the field, and they're seeing that these things are emerging. So the first topic is women and mental health, a holistic well-being perspective of that, and that will be on the 25th of June. We'll be exploring the unique challenges women face with being diagnosed with ADHD or ADD in adulthood. What's fascinating about that is that a lot of women who have burnout and anxiety are getting diagnosed in adulthood. Part of that problem is that there is a gender bias in the diagnostics, because diagnostics are designed for the very hyperactive little boy, and women internalize that hyperactivity, and then it presents later in years as anxiety and depression. And this is it's a very important topic. Hormones are also related to that. So we'll be inviting an expert in this field to speak to us about it. I do invite all the men to join. This understanding would probably save a marriage or your business. So you are all invited to this experience. Our second topic is on eco-psychology, healing through the connection with nature. I truly, truly believe that if we reconnect with nature, we rediscover our authentic nature. And so we're going to be speaking and exploring eco-psychology, and we'll be speaking some experts and practitioners of eco-psychology, and how this revelation of how reconnecting with nature can transform our emotional well-being, our cognitive function, and our social bonds. The third topic is probably my favorite, personal passion, and that's the power of social circles and healing through community. And I truly believe we're moving as a civilization from self-help to helping others. And in some ways, for me, it's moving from kind of like IQ and EQ to LQ, which is the love quotient. And that we can only do through social bonding. We are a social species. And one-on-one therapy, I love my one-on-one therapy, but there are some things that you get from circles and groups which you can't get from individual therapy. So I think both are really super helpful. But in groups, there are certain things like 2 key issues, for example, which we can experience and heal in groups. 1 is grieving, and 2 is celebration. We can't do that alone. And that is incredibly important for us as a society. So we're going to be looking at the power of social circles. We have some amazing guests that's going to take us through an experience of circle, and we're going to discuss different types of circles that's available and how through community we really can heal. And our 4th topic is going to be cultivating radiant well-being through self-care practices and mental health. I believe in practical tools. And so we're going to be speaking to some experts, and I'll also be sharing with you some practical tools which we can use for everyday life, which we can share with other people, which we can teach everybody. And the one thing in my community and in my own practice, which I've seen over the last 2 years, is balancing and regulating the nervous system is so important. And so there's these amazing tools that we can do. And the science shows us that actually in community or in circles or when we're with other people, that our nervous systems and our heart rate co-regulate. And so sometimes if somebody's in struggle and you can be that safe space for them, your body, which is the most intelligent, advanced piece of technology on the planet, it's by divine design, can actually just be that co-regulation space for somebody else. And we're going to look at the science of that, and we're going to teach you some tools around that. And yes, that is all of our topics. And so we invite you along on the journey, so that we can all just break the stigma around mental health, but also just be safe spaces for one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleftheria, for this beautiful presentation of yours, also your part. And at the end, there will be a wrap-up session, which I will be moderating at the end, bringing, of course, the speakers together, dear Rajni, dear Eleftheria, and hopefully all of you to see what we've learned, what we will learn throughout the year. But that's not all, because it would be a real pity to lose all this incredible knowledge. So we will do, as we've done for the last 2 years, the topic of the year, mental health, will be a new book that Ecocivilisation will issue in 2026, where you will be able to read all the points of view of our speakers, but there is even more. I'm inviting you, if you're called to share your own story, to share your own experience, please write a chapter and share it with us. In order to do that within the boundaries of the book, here we are sharing also some instructions how this needs to be done. But we will publish this as well on our webpage. So if you're not capturing everything right now, you will be able to see it, or just get in touch with us and we will mail it to you. This book will be published in May 2026, and we have already agreed that a large conference, a full-day conference on mental health, will be associated with the launching of the book. Already in the phase of preparation, we were addressed by many people asking how they can join, bringing forward new topics. And we said, well, instead of just jamming everything into this year, we will address, after we get this year behind, in a holistic way, a one-day conference. We will be hosting one-day conference on mental health issues, and the book hopefully will be just the cherry on the cake. So at this point, I would just like to reinform you again that the next session on mental health is March 26th. As it was already said, Foundation of Mental Health, Why It Matters for Everyone, which will be coordinated by Rajni. And everything, all the dates are already published on a calendar of Ecocivilisation. So all the dates for the entire year. So you're welcome to take a look and of course pick the ones that talk to you, and you can already mark your calendars. In parallel with the Year of Mental Health, we are also conducting a Year of Leadership Challenged. We've heard today that mental health and the leadership is somehow closely connected and in many ways intertwined. So every 2 weeks there is a session on leadership challenged, and the session then 2 weeks later on mental health. And equally, the next session on leadership challenged is even earlier, is in March 12th. And you're welcome to register and attend. The topic of that talk will be how to lead in the age of disruptions. So that would be all for today. I'm very grateful for you to stick around with us until the end. I hope you are going home enriched with understanding of the scope and incredible dimensions of mental health and why mental health is potentially an essential topic for our future of our societies, for future of our civilization. And I'm looking forward to share this journey with you even in the entire year.